You're 5 years old, huddled in a cave in what's now southern Spain. Outside, the world is locked in ice. Your parents are preparing animal hides by the fire, but you and your siblings have found something fascinating: smooth stones that make different sounds when you tap them together. You don't know it yet, but you're creating humanity's first percussion instruments, developing the musical traditions that will echo through millennia. The Ice Age lasted over 100,000 years, with children making up roughly 40% of most prehistoric communities. During the harshest months, families spent up to 16 hours a day inside their shelters. That's a lot of time for curious young minds to fill. And fill it they did, in ways that would lay the foundation for art, music, storytelling, and games that we still recognize today. What you're about to discover comes from archaeological evidence across Europe and Asia, from children's handprints on cave walls, miniature tools found in prehistoric sites, and the wear patterns on stones and bones that reveal how our youngest ancestors spent their time. The evidence shows that play wasn't just entertainment, it was education, preparation, and the birthplace of human creativity. But before we continue, if you enjoy learning about our ancient ancestors and how childhood has evolved, consider subscribing. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Archaeological evidence from sites like Pecmerle in France reveals one of the most enduring childhood activities: handprint art. Cave walls across Ice Age Europe are covered with the handprints of children, some as young as 2 or 3 years old. But these weren't random decorations. Analysis shows deliberate patterns, suggesting children were learning to use their hands as tools for artistic expression. The handprints tell us something remarkable about Ice Age childhood. Adults lifted toddlers up to place their hands on high cave walls, indicating that children's creative expression was not only tolerated but actively encouraged. Red and black pigments were precious resources, yet they were shared with children who had no practical survival skills to offer in return. Sites like Cueva de las Manos in Argentina show handprint galleries where children of different ages worked together. Smaller handprints are often positioned within or around larger ones, suggesting older children taught younger ones the techniques. This wasn't just art, it was the world's first art classes. But the handprints were just the beginning. Archaeological analysis of Ice Age caves reveals evidence of sophisticated childhood play that went far beyond simple entertainment. At sites like Grotte des Enfants in France, researchers found miniature versions of adult tools: tiny spear, points, small scrapers, and child-sized needles. These weren't toys in the modern sense, they were training equipment. Children as young as 4 were creating their own smaller versions of the tools they watched adults use. Archaeological evidence suggests they had designated areas within caves where they could practice these skills without interfering with essential adult work. Stone chips found in these areas show specific wear patterns consistent with children learning to knap flint through trial and error. The evidence from Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic reveals something even more fascinating. Children were given clay to work with, creating small figurines and experimenting with early ceramic techniques. Some of these child-made objects were deliberately placed in fires, suggesting children were learning about material properties through experimentation. The clay work wasn't random play. Analysis of these child-made ceramics shows progressive skill development over time. Early attempts are crude and often cracked from improper firing. Later examples show more sophisticated understanding of clay preparation, shaping techniques, and firing temperatures. Children were conducting their own materials, science experiments, developing knowledge that would prove crucial for later technological advances. Archaeological evidence from Pavlov, also in the Czech Republic, shows children created elaborate clay animal figures. These weren't just artistic expressions, they were detailed observations of the animals they encountered. Children were developing the observational skills that would make them better hunters and gatherers as adults, while simultaneously creating some of humanity's earliest artistic traditions. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery comes from musical evidence. At sites across Ice Age Europe, archaeologists have found what appear to be the world's first musical instruments, and many show signs of being made and used by children. Bone flutes from sites like Hohlfels in Germany include smaller versions that would fit children's hands and lung capacity. The creation of these instruments wasn't accidental. Archaeological analysis shows they were carefully crafted, with holes positioned to create specific musical intervals. Children were learning complex mathematical and acoustic principles through play, developing the cognitive skills that would later prove essential for survival and social cooperation. Evidence from sites like Isteritz in France suggests children developed sophisticated sound-making games. Collections of shaped bones, stones of different densities, and hollow objects that could serve as resonating chambers have been found in areas designated for children's activities. These weren't just noisemakers, they were early percussion ensembles. The The acoustic properties of caves made them natural concert halls, and Ice Age children took full advantage. Evidence suggests they discovered that different areas of caves produced different sound effects. Children's activities were often concentrated in areas with the best acoustics, suggesting they were actively seeking out the spaces where their musical experiments would sound best. Sites like Trois Frères in France reveal evidence of what researchers call sound mapping by children, where patterns and artifact distributions suggest children systematically explored their caves to find areas with different acoustic properties. Echoing chambers, resonant alcoves, and dead sound zones. They were conducting acoustic experiments that wouldn't be formally studied by scientists for tens of thousands of years. But music wasn't their only creative outlet. Archaeological evidence reveals that children were the primary developers of early storytelling traditions, where patterns on cave floors show that children gathered in specific areas, creating circular arrangements that are consistent with group storytelling activities. The evidence suggests these weren't just casual story sessions. Children developed sophisticated narrative techniques using sounds, gestures, and early visual aids to enhance their stories. Archaeological sites show collections of shaped objects that may have been the world's first story props, pieces that could represent different characters or elements in their narratives. Sites like Lascaux in France reveal that children were active participants in the creation of cave paintings, not just observers. Analysis of the paintings shows multiple artistic styles and skill levels, suggesting different age groups contributed to the same works. Children's sections often focused on animals they found most interesting, frequently smaller creatures, that adults might overlook. The evidence shows children developed their own artistic conventions. While adult cave art typically followed realistic proportions, children's contributions often showed experimentation with size, color, and form. They were developing abstract thinking through artistic expression, laying the groundwork for symbolic representation that would become crucial for language development. Archaeological analysis of sites like Altamira in Spain shows children were experimenting with artistic techniques that went beyond simple representation. They created layered images, used different pigments to create color gradients, and developed ways to use the natural cave wall textures to enhance their artwork. These techniques show sophisticated understanding of visual composition that rivals modern artistic principles. Archaeological analysis reveals that children created the world's first board games. Smooth stone surfaces in caves show wear patterns consistent with games involving moving objects across marked surfaces. Some sites show evidence of scoring systems using small stones or carved marks, suggesting competitive games with complex rules. Evidence from sites like Grotte de Rennes in France suggests children developed elaborate racing games using shaped stones as game pieces. The wear patterns show these games were played repeatedly over long periods, suggesting popular games that were passed down through generations of children. But the games weren't just entertainment. They were education. In disguise, many of the stone games found in archaeological sites mirror the strategic thinking required for hunting and survival. Children were developing pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, and strategic planning through play activities that seemed purely recreational. Sites like Aubry-Castanet in France reveal evidence of what appears to be the world's first dice games. Small, carefully shaped bone cubes with different markings on each face have been found in areas associated with children's activities. The wear patterns on these objects suggest they were used in games of chance, teaching children about probability and risk assessment. The evidence shows children were also the primary innovators in food-related play. Archaeological sites reveal miniature cooking areas where children practiced food preparation techniques using small fires and child-sized tools. These weren't just imitation, they were genuine skill development that contributed to family survival. Children developed their own food experimentation areas where they could try combining different materials without wasting precious adult resources. Archaeological evidence suggests they were often the first to discover which plants, roots, or other materials were edible, serving as the family's early warning system for new food sources. Evidence from sites like Riparo Mochi in Italy shows children created elaborate play kitchens, complete with miniature hearths, tiny cooking vessels made from shells or carved wood, and organized storage areas for play food items. These installations show remarkable sophistication and suggest children were developing complex understanding of food preparation and storage techniques. Sites across Ice Age Europe show evidence of children's construction play. Small arrangements of stones, bones, and other materials suggest children were building miniature shelters, developing the engineering understanding they would need as adults. These constructions often showed remarkable sophistication, with ventilation systems and structural supports that mirrored adult construction techniques. Archaeological evidence from Kostenki in Russia reveals children built scale models of their shelters, complete with entrance systems designed to minimize heat loss, sleeping areas arranged for optimal warmth sharing, and storage spaces for tools and food. These models suggest children were learning complex architectural principles through play. The evidence reveals that children were also the primary developers of early textile arts. Small holes in animal hides, found in areas designated for children's activities, suggest they were learning sewing and leather working through practice projects. These skills were essential for survival, and children mastered them through play long before they were needed for survival. Sites like Sungir in Russia show evidence of sophisticated textile work by children, beadwork, leather tooling, and fiber. Arts, created by young hands, demonstrate skill levels that suggest years of practice. Children weren't just learning these techniques, they were innovating new approaches and decorative styles. Archaeological analysis shows children developed sophisticated social games that helped establish hierarchies and relationships within their groups. Evidence suggests they had complex role-playing games where they imitated adult social structures, practicing the cooperation and leadership skills they would need as adults. But perhaps, most remarkably, children were the primary keepers of cultural memory. Evidence suggests they developed mnemonic games and songs that helped preserve essential survival information across generations. These weren't just entertainment, they were the world's first educational curricula, designed to ensure crucial knowledge survived even when adult teachers were lost to hunting accidents or illness. The evidence from sites like Aubry Blanchard in France shows children developed their own calendar systems, using scratches on bones and stones to track time and seasons. These early timekeeping systems often focused on phenomena that interested children: lunar cycles, animal behavior patterns, and seasonal changes that affected their daily activities. Archaeological sites reveal that children were active participants in tool innovation. Many of the technological advances found in Ice Age sites show characteristics consistent with child experimentation: unusual designs, creative material combinations, and solutions that adult thinking might not have considered. Children's natural curiosity led them to experiment with materials and techniques that adults, focused on survival, might have overlooked. Some of the most sophisticated Ice Age technologies may have originated from children's play activities that adults later recognized as useful innovations. Evidence from sites like Pinsevent in France shows children developed specialized tools for their own activities: miniature hide scrapers that were perfectly sized for small hands, tiny awls for detailed leather work, and small napping hammers designed for learning flint work. These tools show the same sophistication as adult versions, scaled down for children's physical capabilities. The evidence shows children developed the world's first competitive sports. Racing games, throwing competitions, and strength contests helped children develop the physical skills they would need for hunting and survival while providing entertainment during the long winter months, confined to caves. Sites across Ice Age. Europe show evidence of elaborate obstacle courses that children created within their caves, using natural cave features combined with arranged objects to create challenging physical activities. These courses often required cooperation between children of different ages and abilities, developing the teamwork skills essential for group survival. Archaeological evidence from Grotte Chauvet in France suggests children created standardized athletic competitions with specific rules and scoring systems. Marked areas on cave floors indicate starting and finishing lines for races, and arranged objects suggest obstacle courses with defined challenges. These weren't casual games. They were organized sports with formal structure. Archaeological analysis reveals that children were the primary developers of early dance traditions. Wear patterns on cave floors show repetitive movement patterns, consistent with organized dance activities. These weren't just random movement, they were structured activities that helped children develop coordination, rhythm, and social bonding. The evidence suggests these dance traditions served multiple purposes. They provided physical exercise during periods of confinement. They helped children learn to move quietly and efficiently for hunting, and they created social bonds that would strengthen group cooperation throughout their lives. Sites like El Castillo in Spain show evidence of dance circles where children of different ages participated together. The wear patterns suggest specific movement sequences that were repeated regularly, indicating formal dance traditions that were taught and preserved across generations. Children also developed sophisticated hiding and seeking games that doubled as survival training. Archaeological evidence suggests they created elaborate hiding systems within their caves, developing the skills they would need to avoid predators and enemies. What started as play became essential survival techniques. The evidence shows children were the primary developers of early communication systems. Before formal language fully developed, children created gesture-based communication methods that allowed them to coordinate play activities and share information across distances within caves. These early communication experiments laid the groundwork for the complex language systems that would follow. Children's natural inclination to communicate with peers drove the development of increasingly sophisticated symbolic systems that adults eventually adopted for practical use. Archaeological sites reveal evidence of what researchers call silent Games, activities where children communicated entirely through gestures and facial expressions. These games may have developed from the need to remain quiet during dangerous periods, but they evolved into sophisticated nonverbal communication systems. Archaeological sites reveal that children developed memory games using arranged objects, creating the foundation for the complex memorization techniques that would become essential for preserving cultural knowledge in pre-literate societies. These games trained the exceptional memory abilities that characterized Ice Age humans. Evidence from sites like Willendorf in Austria shows children created complex pattern-matching games using colored stones, shaped bones, and carved objects. These games required increasingly sophisticated memory skills and may have been the foundation for the mathematical thinking that enabled later technological advances. The evidence suggests children developed what we might recognize as early puzzle games. Archaeological sites show collections of interlocking objects, shaped pieces that fit together in specific ways, and three-dimensional puzzles that required spatial reasoning skills. These weren't just entertainment, they were cognitive development tools. Sites across Ice Age Europe reveal children were the primary developers of collecting and categorizing activities. Evidence suggests they systematically gathered different types of stones, shells, bones, and other objects, organizing them by size, color, shape, or other characteristics. These activities developed the classification skills that would prove essential for understanding their natural environment. Archaeological analysis shows children created elaborate trading games where they exchanged collected objects according to complex rules. These games may have been the foundation for the economic thinking that enabled later trade relationships between different groups. The evidence reveals that children were active participants in spiritual and ritual activities, but they also created their own versions of these practices. Archaeological sites show miniature ritual objects, small versions of the ceremonial items used by adults, suggesting children were developing their own spiritual traditions alongside their elders. Sites like Malta in Siberia reveal children created small figurines that appear to be spiritual or ceremonial objects. These items show sophisticated artistic skill and suggest children were not just copying adult religious practices, but developing their own spiritual expressions. The archaeological record from sites like Afontova Gora in Siberia shows children developed elaborate fantasy games using carved bone figures. These figurines depict not just real animals, but imaginary creatures that combine features from different species. Children were developing the symbolic thinking that would become essential for abstract reasoning and creative problem solving. Evidence from Goyet Cave in Belgium suggests children created complex narrative games that involved multiple characters and storylines. Collections of carved figures found in children's areas show wear patterns consistent with being moved around repeatedly, suggesting they were used in elaborate story-acting games that could continue over days or weeks. Sites like Kent's Cavern in England revealed children developed sophisticated water games during periods when melting ice created temporary pools within caves. Evidence suggests they created boats from bark and leaves, developed swimming games, and even created artificial water channels to control flow within their play areas. The evidence from Bruniquel Cave in France shows children were among the first to explore deep cave systems, creating their own adventure games in previously uncharted underground areas. The small size of some passages and the presence of children's artifacts in remote cave sections suggest they were natural cave explorers, developing the spatial navigation skills that would prove valuable for hunting and territory mapping. Archaeological analysis of sites like Zaraysk in Russia reveals children developed elaborate winter sports, creating sleds from animal bones and hides, and establishing racing courses on icy cave floors. These activities helped develop balance and coordination while providing high-energy entertainment during the coldest months. Evidence suggests children were the primary developers of early astronomical observation games. Sites with clear views of cave entrances show arrangements of stones that align with celestial events visible from inside the caves. Children may have been the first humans to systematically observe and track celestial movements, laying the groundwork for later astronomical knowledge. Sites like Hohensteinstadel in Germany show evidence of children creating elaborate costume games using animal furs and carved masks. These weren't just dress-up activities, they were sophisticated role-playing exercises that helped children understand animal behavior and develop the psychological techniques necessary for successful hunting. Archaeological evidence from Przedmosty in the Czech Republic reveals children developed complex mathematical games using mammoth ivory pieces carved with different markings. These objects suggest children were experimenting with counting systems, mathematical operations, and geometric principles that would later prove essential for construction and navigation. The evidence shows children created elaborate puppet shows using articulated bone figures attached to sinews that allowed for movement. Archaeological sites reveal collections of these jointed figures, along with evidence of performance areas where children entertain both peers and adults with their puppet narratives. Sites across the Ice Age world show evidence of children developing weather prediction games, using natural cave indicators like air currents, moisture levels, and temperature changes to predict outside conditions. These games taught children to read environmental cues that would prove crucial for survival and hunting success. The transition out of the Ice Age shows gradually changing patterns in children's activities. As weather warmed and families spent more time outside their caves, children's play evolved to include more outdoor activities. But the creative and social foundations they developed during the confined winter months continued to influence human childhood for millennia. Archaeological evidence from the warming period shows children adapted their cave-based activities to outdoor environments. Games that had been played on cave floors were modified for outdoor terrain. Artistic activities expanded to include temporary art using natural materials found outside. The evidence suggests that the transition period was gradual, with children maintaining their indoor activities during cold seasons while developing new outdoor activities during warmer periods. This dual approach may have enhanced their cognitive flexibility and adaptability. Modern child development experts studying Ice Age childhood patterns have found remarkable parallels to contemporary child behavior. The fundamental drives toward creativity, social interaction, and skill development through play appear to be unchanged across tens of thousands of years of human evolution. Research has shown that many of the games and activities developed by Ice Age children continue to appear spontaneously in modern childhood, suggesting these behaviors are fundamental aspects of human development rather than cultural inventions. The archaeological evidence reveals that Ice Age childhood wasn't just about survival preparation. It was about developing the creativity, cooperation, and innovation that would drive human progress. These children, confined to caves during the world's longest winter, created the foundations for art, music, games, and social structures that we still recognize today. The sophistication of children's activities during the Ice Age suggests that childhood has always been a period of intense learning and development. The evidence shows that even under the harshest survival conditions, human societies recognize the importance of allowing children time and resources for play and creative expression. The regional variations in children's activities across Ice Age Europe and Asia suggest that different groups developed their own childhood traditions while maintaining common themes of creativity, skill development, and social learning. This cultural diversity may have contributed to the cognitive flexibility that enabled humans to adapt to changing conditions as the Ice Age ended. Understanding Ice Age childhood reminds us that play isn't frivolous. It's fundamental to human development. Those children, creating their first musical instruments by firelight and painting their handprints on cave walls, were doing more than entertaining themselves. They were becoming human in ways that echo through every playground and classroom today. The legacy of Ice Age children lives on in every child who creates art, makes music, tells stories, or invents games. The creative spark that kept our youngest ancestors engaged during humanity's coldest period continues to drive childhood development, proving that the impulse to play, create, and imagine isn't just entertainment, it's evolution. The evidence from Ice Age childhood suggests that the development of human creativity, social cooperation, and cognitive flexibility was not just a byproduct of survival needs, but an active process driven by children's natural inclination to play, explore, and create. These activities shape not just individual development, but the future of human civilization itself.